Hachimura, they gave away some second round draft picks and a bunch of like different moving parts, and he's coming to the Lakers. Is that a good piece for them?
I don't know who the that is. I don't. Who the is that? Excuse my French. Like, come on, Rob. Like, we're trying to win championships here. We know. Who is that?
Shaq the casual.
Let me clarify. Albert Einstein said things you can get access to you should never memorize. If you ain't a top 10 player, I don't know who you are. That's no disrespect. I don't. So how am I supposed to know who the kid was?
I don't know, man. Maybe because it's like your job or something. Just a hunch. Recently, Shaquille O'Neal made some comments about Rui Hachimura and the trade that the Los Angeles Lakers made, basically insulting the move simply because he didn't know who Rui was. Now, even though on paper this trade was definitely pretty obviously a good one because they gave up virtually nothing to make it happen, this very, very casual take comes out of the mouth of someone who is frankly one of the biggest figureheads talking about basketball today. And while a lot of people like to dismiss this as not that big of a deal, I strongly disagree, and in this video, I'm gonna tell you why. Before I continue on with this video, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best fantasy app out there. The best thing about Prize Picks to me as someone who is new to the space is really just how accessible it is. You pick 2 to 5 players and choose either the under or over of their projected stat. If you get all of them right, you can win max money, or you can choose a flex play and still go positive even if you get one wrong. The platform is super easy to navigate. You can make entries in 60 seconds or less, and while I will be sticking to the NBA side of things because that's my area, there are also projections offered for the NFL, MLB, NHL, esports, NASCAR, the list goes on and on. And I'm sure many of you are looking forward to the Super Bowl coming up, and there's going to be plenty of options in that area as well. And what's awesome for you is that if you are new to Prize Picks, you can use my code RUSTY to get an instant deposit match up to $100. So let's say you put $50 in, Prize Picks gives you $50 on top of that, so now you have $100 to play with. So click the link in the description and use code RUSTY to get an instant deposit match up to $100. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring this video. So what exactly is my big gripe with Shaquille O'Neal? He is someone who I have talked about on this channel before. I actually made a video specifically on him where I focused on the more casual takes that he tends to put out there, as well as his weird vendetta against players like Dwight Howard, or just really the way that he chooses to weirdly be a hater all the time. But what I want to focus on today is the responsibility of the position that he holds. Now, I think a majority of you, at least a large percentage of you here, are definitely not what you would consider casual NBA fans. There are definitely those among you. I see it all the time in my comment section, believe me. But for a majority of you, if you're subscribed to an NBA YouTube channel, or especially if you're subscribed to a lot of them, you're probably someone who pays quite a bit of attention to the league. Shaq serves his purpose as someone who is a voice to people who don't necessarily keep up with the league that much. If you're a hardcore NBA fan, you're not going to Shaquille O'Neal for critical basketball analysis. Everyone knows this. Shaq is a goofy dude, and it's well known within the basketball community that his takes are generally not that good. The only takes that he has that are generally that good are stuff from way back when. Even those can be questionable, but as Shaq explains, he can cover those areas because he was there, but now, apparently, if you're not a top 10 player, he doesn't know who you are. Now, the excuse that is used for Shaq with this behavior is that he is just there to be an entertainer. At TNT, what he is expected to be is just something interesting for fans to watch at halftime. Him and Chuck yelling at each other, you know, the same dynamic that's existed for the last, 12 years. It's incredibly fun, It's never repetitive and the same thing all the time. But I would agree with that argument if Shaq did not constantly, routinely give his opinion in a way that is presented as though it should be taken super seriously. Because if Shaq just simply viewed it as I'm here to be funny and I'm not putting that much critical analysis out there, then I would not have much issue. The problem is he likes to talk about a lot of these things, and he does so through a very, very misinformed lens. There is a responsibility that comes with being a figurehead to talk about this sport in front of casual NBA fans, because if you are putting out misinformed and often just blatantly wrong takes out there for that subsection of fans, a lot of them are going to take those types of arguments at face value. And when they do that, now such a large section of NBA fans is putting out egregious and wrong takes simply because they heard it out of Shaq's mouth. And that's really the big issue here. Shaq has a significant sway in the direction that basketball discourse goes. Now, you can look at it as though Shaq is just saying what he's saying and it's not his fault if anyone just copies his opinion. And I will agree that there is a lot of blame to go to the type of people who just accept that thing at face value. Except at the same time, regardless of what personal responsibility you might want to assign to those people, it's very evident that people just borrow opinions. It's a huge part of things. It's a huge part of pretty much all of basketball conversation. In fact, I get yelled at very often for people just blatantly borrowing my opinions, and I have significantly less authority and sway than Shaquille O'Neal. Obviously. So as long as this practice is as significant and big scale as it is, there is a responsibility there. There is a responsibility to at least remain bare minimum level informed and at least be able to provide a decent set of basketball analysis. Really, the only thing about the TNT halftime show that I genuinely appreciate these days is when Kenny goes up to the big board and breaks down plays. Because when he does that, there's actual basketball analysis to be had. It's not just looking over to Shaq and he says that they should post up more. And then if you say that his argument is dumb, he immediately starts flexing his rings. Now listen, I am all in favor of doing like the bare minimum at your job. Even if you are being paid, 6 or 7, 8 figures. Yeah, that's the number. Even if you're being paid tens of millions of dollars, I'm okay with doing the bare minimum at your work. I really don't care most of the time because whatever, man, it's work, is what it is. Some jobs you can't do that. And in this instance, I do think Shaq just gets flagrant with it, but I kind of understand that position, that point of view. Lord knows that when I worked a grocery job, which was only for a couple of weeks, it's not that big of a deal. But when I worked that job, I did the bare minimum. And frankly, they were also paying me $7.25. So point is, I understand why Shaq does this. And immediately when he said that he doesn't really pay attention to players who aren't top 10, when he said he didn't know who Rui Hachimura was, it's not like I was surprised by this information. It's not something that I didn't already believe to be the case of Shaquille O'Neal. But at the bare minimum, well, all I ask is that you can at least lie to me about it. You can at least pretend to be informed. Because if you're not doing that, it's not necessarily from Shaq, but from the people who choose to use him as their talking figurehead. It is a slap in the face in the world of basketball discourse. It is almost insulting to me that this person who clearly doesn't give a shit is the person who is put in place to talk about basketball for millions and millions of people. He's not the only one, and I'll give Shaq this credit. I'll give this to Shaq. He's not one to always go out there and immediately yell his opinion. Oftentimes they inquire about it and all that. But if you're going to put people in front of a casual fan base, a fan base that's going to take their opinions at face value, all I ask is that those opinions be informed and that those opinions be not awful. And this goes beyond Shaq, because really the issues that I have with Shaquille O'Neal are more representative of the issues that I have with the NBA media landscape in general. I feel like, yes, entertainment is an important part of being on television, but far, far, far too often, entertainment is prioritized over an actual understanding and discussion of the sport. That is why someone like JJ Redick has been so wildly refreshing to everybody. I would argue that JJ Redick is not even like some amazing analyst. I think he's good, but by comparison to what we have been given, JJ Redick looks like a messiah. And that really shouldn't be the case. As appreciative as I am of someone like him existing in this space, that should be commonplace. Being able to break down a play or being able to have a very nuanced and strong basketball conversation, that should be the standard. And so long as we're choosing to just put these entertaining but misinformed people at the forefront, we're doing a huge disservice to all basketball discussion around the world. And that's an area that I particularly care about, and it's an area that I know severely affects how basketball is discussed publicly, like on the internet and all that. And because of that, we have to subject these players to these stupid and casual arguments, because then they are seeing it and they are dealing with it and they are held to expectations based off of these arguments. And yeah, to me, I'm not asking that much. I just want at least some effort, some level of being informed. And if you don't there are people who don't watch the league who know who the top 10 players are, you know, or at least have heard of their names. So it's not that much to ask that you do a little bit more, but I'm sure the entire comment section is going to be like, he's just entertainment, even though I acknowledge that that's how this job works, partially because the discourse is so bad. Anyways, shout out to Rudy for editing this video. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring the video again. And that is it. Goodbye.